And the doctor had, I don't remember in what he was referencing, but he said, "Oh, so you've been having strokes." And he said strokes, plural. And that's when I found out I had had at least 2, if not more, strokes since that initial night in July.
Her face was droopy on this side, and her leg was dragging behind her as she walked away from the door. And I'm sure my mouth was just gaping like, my daughter looks like she's had a stroke.
There's 2 types of strokes. There's ischemic stroke, which is where there's a clot, and the clot can either form in the brain or it can travel from somewhere. So a clot could come from somewhere in the heart, it could come from a leg, it can travel, and then it blocks the blood flow, like there's a clog in the plumbing, and then you have damage that occurs around that area. You can also have hemorrhagic strokes, which is where there's bleeding, and what we most frequently see is that is related to uncontrolled high blood pressure.
The weekend before my 28th birthday, my parents had come up to celebrate, and we went to a restaurant that had a brunch buffet, and I had some soup that was unlabeled because the only food allergy I knew of was pineapple and walnuts. And lo and behold, I took one bite of the soup and immediately my face started buzzing and my whole face felt numb. So we drove to the emergency room immediately since I was having some trouble breathing, and they got me stabilized with some Benadryl and a steroid. And then we went home and I just rested the rest of the day. But when I woke up after resting, my left arm felt numb. I thought to myself, if I don't go to the ER, I don't know if I'll wake up in the morning. I don't know what made me think that, but I just was like, I feel like this is serious. And so I had heard on PSAs that a sign of a stroke is if you can't hold your arm up, like if you hold it in the mirror and it immediately drops.
We like to use the acronym FAST. So face, which is face weakness, arm or leg weakness where you're not able to use an arm, and speech difficulty. And then the T in FAST is time to call 911.
So I went into my bathroom and I was already having trouble with my arm because it was clenched in a fist. And I couldn't really move anything like outward, but I did still at that point have some shoulder movement. So I swung my arm up in front of the mirror and immediately it dropped down. I somehow got myself to my car and drove myself to the ER and stumbled in. And I said, I think I'm having a stroke.
It's very hard to see your 28-year-old go through that and just be like, how is this even possible for someone that young? And that's what we heard all along the way. They questioned us every time, how old is she?
I was just very angry at myself because it felt like it was my fault. Because I really had not been as active as I should have been for a 28-year-old. My doctors were really kind and reminded me that I had quite a few risk factors stacked against me, and that has kind of helped me be more patient. And they've really been emphasizing that, okay, so you weren't being as active as you should be, but you can now. And so I've really been trying to focus on looking at this as a second chance.
The quicker we can start them in rehab and start that process and retrain the brain to figure out different ways to do the things that they have done before. It's such an important part of a stroke story, is to really get appropriate rehab afterwards. Evaluating things not only as far as muscle movement, but as your speech, your cognition. Depression is a thing that really goes along with stroke. Obviously, you've had a major event. Your life has changed.
I just graduated end of November from physical therapy and occupational therapy, and I can finally wiggle my fingers. It wasn't a fist until about the first week of September, so I think it was about 6 weeks total. And I'm relearning how to write and how to type, and I'm working with vocational rehab at Department of Human Services so that I can return to my job functions, and just learning how to do life a little bit differently and a little bit slower, and realizing that that's okay.
If they can stick with it, really being able to progress even years after they've had a stroke, given, just continuing to work on that rehab is such an important part of it.
I'm just really thankful to have been able to be there with her and to be where we are now, and to see that she can pick something up and let it go. And to know that things are looking bright for the future.
I'm really appreciative that all my family really was supportive that I went to the ER that first night. Even if it didn't get the results needed right away, I'm just really appreciative that they confirmed that I made a great choice in doing that. And based on the urgency with which my doctor told me to get to the emergency room because I was at risk for having further strokes, I do feel like if I hadn't gone to the ER that night, maybe I would have not woke up, maybe not that next day, but maybe a week later. I don't know. I'm trying to focus on the fact that this is kind of a second chance at things.